Hello and welcome once again to Northumberland for our second visit to Alnwick Castle, home for more than 600 years of the Dukes of Northumberland. During those 6 centuries and more, the Dukes of Northumberland have been collectors on the grand scale. So what you find in Alnwick Castle now is the sum total of generations of the same family who've been able to acquire some of the great works of art of the periods through which they've lived. Well, during this special programme, I'll be looking at some of those treasures with 3 of our Roadshow experts. Clive Farraher in the library has found a book of the Old Testament with unique Tudor connections. From the many hundreds of pictures in the collection, Peter Nahum has chosen one of particular appeal to him, and Victoria Leatham will be looking at some of the exceptional objects in the Red Drawing Room. And I'll be joining each of our experts a little later. Now, inevitably, during the making of the Antiques Roadshow, we see many more items than we're possibly able to show you within the confines of individual programmes. So we're going to use this opportunity here at Alnwick to show you some of the hitherto unseen highlights of the series so far. We begin early in our travels.
Here at Ely, the beauty and grandeur of the cathedral, I feel, is matched by the beauty and the grandeur of this wonderful doll. Indeed, a prize-winning doll. Here we have the certificate to prove it. The doll won 2nd prize for the best dressed doll. And here on the original box it says Batterscombe wax doll. Now, who was Batterscombe?
Well, this Mrs. Batterscombe was my husband's grandmother, and she did all this wonderful work.
The clothes are really quite extraordinary. I'm going to unveil her so that people can see her in all her beauty. Now, isn't she fantastic? Now, she's a poured wax doll, an early wax doll, probably dating from about 1860, 1870. So a good deal earlier than the date when the prize was won.
I see.
Almost certainly made in England. There were a lot of companies making poured wax dolls at that time. Pierotti was one, Montanari was another, and she's probably by Montanari. The hair has been inset into the head. You can see she's even got a crown, just as you would have with real hair, and I think it is real hair rather than mohair. So very nicely made. She's in very good condition as well. Her little hands are undamaged. The embroidery here on the bonnet, still fresh. The satin ribbons, which are always fall apart, it seems, as soon as I pick anything up. Doesn't happen with this one, it's great. I'm going to just turn her over, and then here at the back, the lovely, again, a lovely silk satin ribbon, and beautifully dressed underclothes and so on. I mean, looking at how beautifully she's dressed here, it seems extraordinary that she only won 2nd prize.
Yes, well, there is a story to this.
Oh, what's that?
Because apparently the only reason she won 2nd prize was because she had a full layette except for a pair of knickers.
Oh. And they didn't think that was quite proper. That's a lovely story. But she is in quite extraordinary condition, and she ought to be insured. Is she insured now?
No, not individually.
No. Well, she would have been quite an expensive doll when she was made, and she's an expensive doll now. And I think at auction she would certainly be getting perhaps £1,000.
Oh, that's lovely. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And what's extraordinary is it survived in pretty good condition, apart from a little chip up there, which has gone back again. Now, where was it made? It was made in Germany, funnily enough, and probably for the Indian market. It's exactly the kind of colour scheme. I went out to India some 20 years ago, and this was exactly the sort of thing that I was seeing there. Right. So it was probably made for the Indian market. And elephants are very saleable. It dates from about 1900.
Yes.
Although it's relatively modern, it's a very decorative thing.
Yeah.
And I would think somewhere around 800 to 1,000 pounds.
Wow.
All right.
Thank you very much indeed.
Not a bit.
Thank you.
Where's it been and where have you kept it?
Unfortunately, I lost my brother-in-law and my sister at the end of last year, and I had the job of clearing the house, and I found it in the loft. I bought it out and I looked at it and I said, oh, we'll hang on to that. You never know with paintings whether they're worth anything or not.
Well, I think that's good advice. Well, the artist is here on the plate, George Morland. Now, George Morland was one of the most popular painters of his time, at the end of the 18th century, early part of the 19th century. Now, it's not easy to see the real quality in this picture, and obviously it needs to be cleaned, but there's certain things I'd like to point out. If one looks at the face of the fishmonger, I think we can call him, he's come down to the beach to buy the catch, round his face, you can actually see that the paint has sunk into the canvas and the kind of tops of the weave of the canvas showing through, and it makes this face look a little bit blotchy. Yes. Same with the woman selling the catch. One can't quite make out the quality in the face, and this arm is a bit difficult. But if you start to look into other parts of the painting, you look at the fish here and the basket, and then the dog here with the light hairs on his front and nose, and the painting of the tail. There's a fantastic amount of vitality. And I think, on balance, that it probably is by George Morland. Right. But just what it's going to look like when it's cleaned up, we just don't know. No. Now, have you any idea what it was worth? Oh, you obviously said that because you're also going to kind of put it on the tip.
No idea at all.
I would have thought that if it cleaned up fairly well and was restored, it would probably be worth about £2,000 to £2,500. And if it had been in very, very good condition, it would have probably been worth £4,000 to £5,000.
Oh,
so it was worth kind of putting off the rafters and putting it to one side.
It certainly was. Thank you very much.
Anyway, thank you very much for bringing it in.
Thank you.
Do you know, stylistically, this is probably one of the most extraordinary clocks I've ever seen. What sort of date do you believe it to be?
I thought about the middle of the last century. 1850s?
Well, I thought about 1840-ish. But looking at it more closely, I think we've got something here that's quite a bit earlier. Let's open the back and have a little look. It's an incredible size movement to have in a case of this small size, really. It's taking up the whole thing, which is a sign of great quality. I'm glad to see you've put this pendulum retaining nut on. Just going to remove that. And it parks in that little hole there, but I'm not going to put it there for the moment. I'm just going to remove it. And then we can see the signature reflected here, Widdenham, Lombard Street, London. While the door's open, I see you put a sort of bit of black paper here, which is a slight shame.
No, I haven't actually. But,
somebody else did
somebody,
it, didn't
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
It'd be nice to see the original silk covering that door, which it is from the outside, but not on the inside there. So, let's just examine the rest of the case. Bronze, of course, ormolu, English throughout, obviously movement, and certainly case English. And stylistically, well, what can we say? It is almost straight out of that era of the Brighton Pavilion, in absolute high regency. Yes. We've got Oriental influence, we've got Turkish influence, and down here we've got French Empire influence. Dial-wise, it's very nicely done. And beautiful engraving. Up here, a bird over a basket of flowers and fruits. Lovely, lovely, lovely thing. So, certain things say to both of us that it's 1840-ish, but I think a furniture man, looking at all these influences, would absolutely say high regency. Yes. So, I'm going to split the difference and say something around 1820-ish. Right. I think this is a very rare object.
Yes.
And I'm going to hopefully surprise you by saying that if that came up to auction now, I have every confidence that it would fetch at least £3,000, if not quite a bit more. And if I was retailing it at a good London antiques fair, I'd be looking for around £5,000 for this.
Wow.
You've not done too badly.
Well, Clive, I understand there are some 13,000 volumes in this great library altogether, and you could really have chosen any one of them. You've picked this particular one, so there must be a very good reason.
Absolutely. It is the most exquisite, poignant relic of Anne Boleyn, Queen Anne Boleyn. This is her book of Ecclesiastes. It's an illuminated manuscript with the most fabulous illuminations, dating from the time when she was actually queen, the 3 years, the 1,000 days in which she actually reigned as queen.
Well, the thing that strikes me at once about it is, bearing in mind this is from the early part of the 16th century, it's in such superb condition.
It is. The paint is as fresh as it could possibly be. This Gothic black letter and these wonderful Renaissance illuminations, which continue throughout, some large, some small. It's just absolutely exquisite, with the most wonderful
Gosh, isn't that nice?
coat of arms here, Henry and Anne, and his arms impaling her arms there.
That's the finest illumination of the lot, I think. And is that repeated,
Yes,
the
that's-
arms on the cover?
That is repeated in enamel on the front and the bottom. And also, I don't know if you see these little animals and birds here. These were designed by Holbein. The original designs are, in fact, in the British Museum. And he has put those on the corner to add to it.
But what's the connection with Alnwick?
Ah, right. Well, Henry Percy was, in fact, at the court of Henry VIII with his father. And he saw Anne Boleyn and fell in love with her, proposed to her, and was apparently accepted. And the king found out through one of his ministers and got Cardinal Wolsey to go along and try and say that the king had preference. He was still married, of course, at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Percy initially said no, but I think was prevailed upon by his father and obviously by other ministers around at the time. He lost the love of his life.
And she was in love with him?
And she was apparently in love with him, but prepared to sacrifice herself to the king.
So it was ultimately the most tragic story of all. She loses the love of her life and then soon afterwards loses her own life.
Absolutely. It's very, very sad indeed. I mean, as this book shows, with all these wonderful pieces of illumination, the prospects for their marriage were very great. They wanted to produce a male heir, and they only produced a female heir, Queen Elizabeth I, one of the greatest of our monarchs. And in the end, he tired of her, and she was convicted of adultery and beheaded.
And how did the book come to be at Alnwick? Has it been here since the 16th century?
No, it hasn't. This was collected by a descendant of Henry Percy, and now obviously lodges here quite rightly as a memorial of that liaison.
The Beatles came over to Jersey to do a show in 1963, I think. We went to a phone box and phoned up the hotel and said, are the Beatles staying with you?
Yes.
And they probably said no. So we immediately went round to the hotel and just stood and waited.
And what are these stains on these pages? Are they tears or raindrops or
No,
what?
it actually started to drizzle a little bit.
Oh, did it?
Yes.
Well, they're very
All the
nice
time.
indeed. I think they probably bring around about £1,000 to £1,500 for the group. Yes.
You're joking.
No, it's absolutely true.
Just show, because this is it. This is what it is. It's the be-all and end-all for curing you name it. Look, not one, but two.
Do you know what it is?
Well, when I saw underneath it said pool, then I assumed it was pool.
I think this is absolutely wonderful. It's exactly the sort of thing I go mad for.
The VD vibrator for mechanical massage and uses to the healthy facial massage, hair health, athletes and general tonic. And it's used to uses to the sick, rheumatism, constipation. That's got me mind-boggling. Quick burst on your VD vibrator and you're right as rain.
If you go to an auction, these sort of pieces will now be fetching 40, 50, 60 pounds and upwards. And if I was going to say collect anything for the future, this would be very high on my list.
The nice thing about this is it tells us how it was used, because we've got strawberry leaves and strawberry flowers, so filled with ripe red strawberries, and a bowl for sugar and a jug for the cream. And I suppose, what would that be for?
Posy flowers, probably strawberry flowers, I don't know.
And splendid looking on a Victorian table. Do you fill it with strawberries yourself? Have you used it?
We have used it, but it takes an awful lot of strawberries, which means that we've got to have an awful lot of people to feed with it.
I mean, there was a great fashion for these in mid-Victorian England, and normally they're in pottery, made in the Majolica wares of Minton and George Jones. This one is very unusual, being in porcelain. And I must admit, I've never seen one like it, or was really as splendid and decorative. It sums up the idea of making the design and the purpose together. The images and decoration reflects the intention of the piece, and the Victorians love that. Are there any clues to who made it?
There is something under, I think, was it that one?
Oh, wait, there's a mark
That's
there.
it.
Right.
It's very hard to decipher, right?
Oh, Well, that's one I do know, because I grew up with this mark. I was taught that mark by my father when I was 10 years old, because I came in Worcester, and this is Royal Worcester. That's their mark of a crown above a circle, and little squiggles of the W and the date 1751 when they claimed to be founded. And that was the mark that they used in the 1860s. And this is around about 1862, 1865. It would have been costly when it was made. Probably not many have survived, as I suppose it's so easy to get the jug knocked off and broken. But isn't this lovely condition? I like the painting very much of these flowers. The leaves and flowers are really very realistically done, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I think they're going to be painted by a great flower painter at Worcester called David Bates. He joined as an apprentice in the 1850s and went to Worcester to learn to paint, because in those days it was the only way you could get a grounding in fine art.
It's got some lovely colours, that kind of bluey shade in the leaf. Really brings it to life, doesn't it?
That's right. And to life, and quite valuable too, because it's something so unusual. I've got to put a price on it, but I've never having seen one. One's got to guess somewhere. I suppose to a collector, £1,000 maybe?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Well, as I'm sure you know, it's Japanese. You know the Japanese?
Yes.
It's what we call Imari porcelain, characterised by this underglazed blue, iron red and gilding, and sometimes you get other enamels in there as well. It was actually made at Arita inland and exported out through the port of Imari, largely by the Dutch. And these large dishes, you also get enormously big vases, were meant to go around fireplaces. And you find them in sets, garnitures, going up round a big fireplace, and these were mounted on the wall.
Oh, right.
In the 18th century, they quite frequently turned them into tables, like you've got here. But this one, which may well have been mounted as a table in the 18th century, has certainly lost its original table, and we now have one which dates from about 1840. This is rosewood, 1840 support. We've got some nice details. We've got this banded hedge, which turns up on Japanese porcelain a great deal. You get it on Imari, you get it on Kakiemen porcelain, and then, of course, it was copied when it came over to Europe by the other factories, particularly Meissen, Chelsea did it, and Bow, and so on. But we've also got here some very nice a butterfly flying here, and these amusing crickets wandering about. Did you spot those before? That's what those are. They're crickets. Now, if we look at the back, we might find something else. Yep. Here we have got a number of stilt marks. This is where it was supported in the kiln, like that. And then when it came out, those stilts were stuck to the bottom, they were knocked off, and you leave these little marks. This one, that was to stop the bottom sagging, because the Japanese couldn't control their porcelain as well as the Chinese. We've got one ring on here, which is much more characteristic of a Japanese dish, whereas on a Chinese dish, you'll find two rings, all right?
Fascinating.
All in it all, it's actually a jolly nice dish and table. I think that would probably make somewhere around £3,000 to £4,000. All right?
Right, yes.
That's with the stand?
With the stand,
With
yes.
the stand.
I should have said it's made about 1830, 1835.
Well,
Did that sort of tie in?
The provenance is the chap was the colonel of the Light Horse Volunteers of London and Westminster.
Oh, yes,
which was founded in 1805 and disbanded in 1823.
Right. Generally speaking, I suspect when used as a candelabrum,
it will be in the top.
The rows of candle holders will be up there.
That's right.
And then you have a little bit for them, and then that comes out, right? Well done. Shower of plate powder. So you get a single candlestick there, and then all the other candles around. And then what happens is you unscrew this. That, and that in there. Absolutely, this unscrews.
It's Sheffield plate, isn't it?
It's Sheffield plate, yes.
When did Sheffield plate finish?
About 1840. And that screws in there. And you would have 6 little dishes and a big central dish like this. It's really
What would it be used for, the
With
dishes?
these you would have a massive fruit arrangement, pineapple, grapes spilling over and all that right in the centre, and then little bonbons in the dishes.
They had bonbons in there.
Absolutely, all sorts. There is a coat of arms with a motto, and I assume you know who that is. Well, that's presumably
the colonel, as far as I know, yeah.
How old was he when he died?
Well, he was born in 1754, and he died in 1837.
Yes, so he's quite, yes.
He was quite an old man, wasn't he?
Quite an old man, yes. Well, it was, you know, he liked nice things, so there it is. Do you have it insured?
I had it insured for £750.
For how much?
750.
Yes, right. Well, I would go to more like 3,500.
Would you now?
Thousand, yes, yes. It's very saleable. It's a wonderful object. I know it's an absolute purgatorial thing to clean, but I don't often suggest such a thing, but you might think about having it really once properly cleaned and then completely lacquered.
The trouble is, continuous cleaning, you're taking all the plate off.
You'll clean all the plate off eventually, whereas doing it like this, it will keep for a long, long time. And then, you know, you can use it easily, you can have your fruit in it, or you can have it as a candle, and it will be marvellous, because it would look so much better, really clean and marvellous.
Yes. Well, we're standing in front of one of the greatest portraits in the history of English painting.
It's extraordinary that you say that, because we're in a room surrounded by portraits by Sir Peter Lely. There are a couple of Van Dycks there. There are 4 Canalettos in this room. Why did you single out this one?
To begin with, William Dobson was the first Englishman to paint English men. There is a brutal honesty in this painting, which you simply do not find in the Flemish artist who dominated British portrait painting at this time. For instance, on the other side of the fireplace is a Van Dyck. You see in this Van Dyck typical foppish mannerisms given to the sitters. Even Van Dyck could not escape this.
But what was the motivation behind the painting, do we know?
Well, we have to think of when it was painted. It was either painted in 1645 or 1646.
Civil War.
Right in the middle of the Civil War. 1645, King Charles has moved his court to Oxford. His courtiers are cramped into this small town.
And these 3 men are courtiers.
And these 3 men are courtiers. There is immense tension. Cromwell is closing in. It's do or die time. It's all or nothing time. And beneath these sweaty, real brows, we feel that tension, that anxiety.
I must say it is fascinating to have a picture described in the way that you do, because you can see in their eyes, the life has gone out of their eyes, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And so we should come to the sitters, I suppose.
Yes, who are they?
Well, in the centre, we have a brutally honest portrait of William Dobson himself. On the left, we have Nicholas Lanier. He was master of the King's music. And on the right, we have Sir Charles Cotterell, who was William Dobson's youngest patron.
Now, that's another intriguing element in the picture. Why does Cotterell, with his arm around the artist, appear to be almost defending him against the man in the white satin?
And the man in the white satin, Nicholas Lanier, for a start, is a collector of old master drawings, and in his hand he holds an old master drawing. It is actually of a nude woman and a cupid. He represents pleasure. Sir Charles Cotterell, on the other hand, has an austere black costume. He represents restraint. He is restraining his friend, and we have to remember this painting is painted by Dobson, and Dobson depicts himself. He's already going. He's already gone. He is out of control, and he brutally depicts himself in this manner.
So it's as if Cotterell is warning him that times are changing forever.
Times have changed. They've gone. But he's saying, look, hold on. There is a discipline we might get through. But Dobson is saying, I don't think I'm going to make it, and nor did he. He died, aged 35, in 1646, so that he is predicting almost his slide down to oblivion. It's for this reason, I feel, that this picture ultimately is a tragedy. But the whole point is that we today can touch these people. In all the other pictures in this room, we don't really relate to them. This picture we can relate to whatever age we're in.
Look at that. That is absolutely Wonderful. Look at that character.
You can't help but be very sorry for it, can you? Dressed in those clothes, sitting on a camel in the middle of the Egyptian
In
desert.
Egypt, I know. It must be extraordinarily hot, I think.
Well, I tell you what, you've got her, I've got him.
Oh, no.
It's a wonderful old whiskery gent. Do you see him sitting on his camel?
Yes, good.
But look at the ruins. Look at the obelisks.
I
Where do you
think
think
it's
they were? Giza or...
It's got to be that
Valley of the
area.
Kings area.
Yes, absolutely. What do you think they're worth?
150, 200 pounds? It depends who they are.
It depends who they
are.
So I assume you've had a doll in your life to put in this doll's bed.
Well, funnily enough, my mother would never let me play with it. It was kept religiously up in the attic. And it wasn't until I had children of my own that I allowed them to use it and made the linen and the patchwork for it.
Why do you think that was, your
I
mother?
don't know. It's strange because it was made for her.
You've got the little pillows. Oh, you've got a PCMC.
That's my daughter's initials.
You mean you made that as well?
Yes, yes.
That's wonderful.
But I've done it on old linen.
Well, this type of late 19th century doll's bed, certainly with the old panelling, I can see it might make as much as sort of £600 at auction.
Yes, yes. Good.
Good? On another note, tell me about this.
Well, I don't know what the background of that is at all, but I've had it all my life, and my parents had it. As far as I know, it's got no history attached to it from our point of view.
That's rather a shame because for me, there's something wonderful about this. I love the shape of it.
Isn't it pretty?
It
Yes.
is 1750. It's mid-18th century.
Is it? 1750?
Yes, and it's lovely to have this heart in the middle, which is carved lovingly, probably for a grandchild or even for a daughter. And these are difficult to find because normally they're not in perfect condition because they've been used, because it's a rocker. We're talking about quite a lot of money if you were to find it. And at auction, I can see this making probably somewhere in the region of £1,000 to £1,500.
Really? Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Well, they were really bought by my grandfather and have descended through the family since then.
Yes, so you don't know the history of
I
them?
know nothing about them, no.
Well, there are actually two good examples of Chinese ceramics from different parts of China. This one is the earlier of the two. This is a piece of celadon. It's made at a place called Lungchuan in Zhejiang province. And it's an example of a tradition that's dying out when this is made. This is made in the early part of the Ming Dynasty, probably in the late 15th century. It's very, very heavy. This is a massively potted piece. And it's what is called a blossom vase or a mei ping. And it's all the decoration here is done in these zones. The main band is peony. And it's, again, it's gouged away, it's carved rather than sort of incised like a surgeon's knife. So you can see how it's got these channels where the glaze collects. But it's a good example because it's all there. I think that's all in reasonable order, except for this bit down here. If you can see the difference in the crackle here? It's suddenly gone opaque here, and these lines really accentuate. This is a restoration. So from being worth maybe £3,000, £4,000, £5,000, it's down to about maybe £1,000, £1,500 for this piece. Whereas, if I may put that to one side here, move on to this. This is, in fact, that was celadon, this is porcelain. This is a quite fine example of porcelain made at Jingdezhen, where most blue and white is made, almost all Chinese blue and white is made. And you can see it's very, very white. The material has got a very, very thin glaze, and it's painted in this very beautiful cobalt. Cobalt varies in colour enormously. Every period you can tell what period it is from the tonality. This one is brilliant. You can see it's got two dragons on it. This is just one, chasing the flaming pearl up here. A dragon emerging from the wave, and there he is, looking quite ferocious but really benign. It's a lovely object, and I'd imagine this is worth in the region of about £2,000, maybe £3,000.
Well, Vicky, it's difficult in a room like this red drawing room to know what not to talk about. We could talk about the chandelier, we could talk about the mirror, we could talk about the porcelain, we could talk about the Renaissance pictures. There's just so much.
Spoilt for choice. I mean, it really is a great parade room. Probably the most important things in the room, however, are the pair of cabinets on either side of the fireplace. They were brought here in 1824 by the third Duke, who paid a phenomenal 2,000 guineas for them, which was a great deal of money at the time.
But nothing compared to their current worth.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the current worth is incalculable because they are the only great Baroque cabinets of this type in the world today.
And it's only close up that you realise that all of that decoration, that subtlety, has all been achieved in stone.
I know. It's quite phenomenal what they did. And the carcass of the thing is obviously timber, but when you look at the thickness of the doors, it gives you some idea of what they were actually dealing with. The physical carcass of the piece is rubbish.
Yes.
If you look at a piece like this from behind, it's orange boxes, it's just junk.
Yes.
All of it was parade furniture. It was made to be seen from the front and nobody was bothered how it was constructed. But because the things were so heavy, the panels were so heavy of the hard stones themselves, they had to mount them onto timber using very, very thick doors like we've got here. And what we've got here is a man who was basically trained as a metal worker. Cucci came to France not as a hardstone inlayer, but he came as a metal worker. He was a fondeur. He was a man who knew how to cast bronze, how to gild it, and how to get the best details and the finest details out of a piece of metal. And he obviously couldn't resist when it came to this, putting these little tiny fleur-de-lis decorations on the inside where they would practically never be seen. I mean, that's hardly ever been opened. You can see it's not faded at all.
Not at all. Indeed, the overall condition is miraculous when you bear in mind that these are 17th century pieces, but there is some damage, I see.
There is a little bit of damage. I mean, this is inevitable, especially when you're going to be shipping things like this from one side of the channel to the other. You're bound to get a knock and a bruise here and there. What we've got here is an interesting, it actually enables us to see how the piece is constructed. Into the base black marble, the slate, you have got a hole here dug with an instrument, into which they will set their cornelian, like we've got here, this lovely little cornelian, probably would have been a little cherry, set into that. So it would have been half buried, rather like an iceberg with half of it below the level of the water. Half of it would have been inserted into the piece of furniture, just with glue.
And do we know what happened to Cucci?
Well, he was very successful while the king was still going strong. I mean, basically Louis XIV established, with the help of Colbert, this marvellous series of workshops at the Gobelin factory in Paris. But when the king ran out of money, which inevitably happens to kings if they go this sort of route eventually, yes. All these workshops gradually sort of tailed off and people left and went to get other jobs elsewhere. And Cucci, we think, died in Paris in about 1705.
And what happened to the other cabinets? I mean, presumably he made dozens of
dozens
these.
Dozens of them.
Do many exist still?
And, no, this is extraordinary. These are the only two that we know to have been made by him. All the others ended up in the Louvre, stored, and eventually were broken up for the hardstone specimens, which is so sad. They were literally hacked to bits, wrecked, and people just took out the little pieces of lapis and cornelian and used them for displays.
Now, of course, we would never, in any circumstances, see anything like this on a roadshow, but we would occasionally find panels, because the panels are collectible in their own right, aren't they?
Oh, of course they are, and they do crop up from time to time. And the wonderful thing is that when they do come, just little pieces perhaps, all right, they're expensive, but you have the impression that what you're doing is taking part in a collecting habit, which goes back to Francois Ier, the first king of France, really to go into this sort of work, even back to the Romans who used to inlay hardstones into panels. And so it would give whoever was able, lucky enough, to collect or to buy just a single panel, a feeling that they were taking the hand of history and joining in with all those people in the past who've had such pleasure out of Baroque pieces of furniture like this.
Have you ever heard of Thomas Sidney Cooper?
No, not very much, actually.
Well, he lived for 99 years, was probably, except for Lancia, one of the great, great painters of cows and sheep. And of course, that's what he was best known for. But this is very early. If you look very carefully with a magnifying glass, and I've got to look, here it is, you can see T.S. Cooper, 1837. Now, he was in his early 30s when he painted this. And so, in a way, it's got a rather sort of more precise style than perhaps he had later on. He trained in Belgium with an artist called Verbekoven, and then came back to England and did solely these pictures of domestic animals. And I think he's a great technician. Again, you can see the quality of both the cow, the goat, and the kid beneath. I mean, I think it's superb quality, don't you?
I actually think you can almost be in the field. Yes. You know, it's very realistic.
Exactly. I mean, I love it, and I like the slightly moody sky. Shall we look at the other one now?
Yes.
It's not quite a pair, is it?
No, it's not quite.
A lone bull in a field. Again, probably painted in Kent. This one's signed, slightly different place, just here, just underneath this little scratch, which is rather sad. It's probably worth just getting that restored. And this says T.S. Cooper, 1847. I think he must have been a tremendous salesman, Cooper. I've seen letters he's written to various clients, and he always says, this is the best picture I painted. And he painted hundreds of pictures, and he lived for 99 years. And, I mean, he must have painted 2 a day sometimes. I mean, he really did paint. He was a very prolific artist. Maybe slightly exaggerating there, but he's certainly a prolific painter. Have you ever had them insured or valued?
I think they were insured about 10 years ago.
What sort of price did you...
I actually...
figure, can you remember?
No, I actually don't know, because my dad did it, so I really don't know.
I think that one's a little bit more interesting, but they're very, very, very charming. I mean, the prices for Cooper vary considerably. And the very, very large ones can make, I mean, hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Wow.
I would say something like these, they're not quite a pair, but these two, I would insure for £10,000.
Oh, really? Better go and tell my dad then.
You better go tell your dad.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a set of 3 wonderful Derby porcelain plates here, painted by the artist George Compline, and they date from the end of the 18th century, circa 1790. How long have you had them for?
And they've been in the family as long as I can remember.
Because they would originally have been part of a dessert service. One can see that clearly from the pattern number on the reverse of the plate with the Derby mark in puce and pattern number 159. And I have seen other plates from this service. George Compline, he was a Frenchman who came over to work in London, and he decorated little enamel boxes in London. Very, very fine quality painting. And he left London in around 1789 and went to the Derby factory and worked there. And that was really the golden era of the Derby factory, where they produced their best work. The factory managed to get together a group of very fine artists, and Compline was really one of their leading artists. And you can see from each of the plates here the incredible fine quality, and really his trademark, which is a little nest of eggs just here in the centre. I don't know if you can see that. And also birds in flight or perched on branches. And it's incredibly detailed work, as you can imagine. Do you like them? Do you like them yourself?
Yes, we love them. Yes.
Yeah, I think they're very beautiful,
fond of them.
and it's really a wonderful service. And each plate would be worth certainly between £1,000 and £1,500. And so the 3 of them together would be around £3,000 to £5,000.
It's a pity I haven't got the whole service.
Yes, absolutely. But they're extremely desirable, and Compline is one of the most sought-after artists of that Derby golden era.
Well, it's a sort of great temptation to actually recline here, isn't it, this afternoon? Have a quiet snooze. Very comfortable.
Yes, it is.
Is this a new cover on here?
Yes, and my wife upholstered it quite recently.
Did she do the stuffing as well?
No, it's the original horsehair stuffing.
I'm just feeling there's a rolled edge there, hard rolled edge, which is very difficult to do. I was going to say, if she did that, well done. Jolly difficult. Very stylish piece.
Yes, it is.
Very stylish. I like these columns at the side with these sort of twist and then those studs round. I know it's very, very nice and typical of that period. Beautiful quality. The veneers are lovely, the edges are sharp, and as I say, very stylish. As a daybed or as a bed, but of course what we're actually sitting on is an ottoman.
That's right.
Right, let's have a look at it. There. And lo and behold, look at that. Those hinges are absolutely wonderful. Great quality throughout. Great quality throughout. And we do have a maker's name here. Hogden, Manchester, and then a number. That's the pattern number, the number of the item itself, which gives us a date which ties in very nicely, round about 1880. So how about that with your family? Does that match in?
Well, it belonged to my great-grandmother, so that would probably fit in quite well.
Well, we allow 30 years per generation. Let's sit back down again, John. We allow 30 years a generation. She would have probably bought it new. One gets an idea. It doesn't look as if it's been moved around a lot. It's, as I say, it's in very good conditions. Jolly good. I've never actually seen one. An ottoman with a lift lid, with one end on which to recline. Look back where we started. Valuation, very difficult. Have you had it valued?
No, we haven't. No.
Well, an ordinary ottoman with Turkey covering on it, Turkey work cover on it, or velvet, as they do a lot of them now. Certainly if they're period with those sort of fittings on will make between £800 and £1,000. This one really ought to be £2,000 for insurance. All right?
Yes,
very good.
thank you very much. Yeah.
First of all, what is it? It's not, when you pick it up, it's not immediate what it is. But what the giveaway is actually the name on the front, which is Charles Wheatstone. Now, Wheatstone was one of those 19th century inventors, very clever, industrious person. He had full of ideas. One of his was to actually construct this. It's a type of mouth organ. It's the best way to describe it. I'll give you a quick demonstration, but I'm not a musician, so it probably will sound terrible.
Right, neither of we.
And if you want to change, rather than a mouth organ where, as you know, you move your lips up and down the actual key, to actual change key, you just depress the ivory keys on either side. Now, just see if we can actually open up the back and see, oops, here it comes, part. And inside, you can see that the little ivory knobs on the side just open and close the reeds. And as you depress them, so they open and close. What's extraordinary about it, this is the first free reed instrument ever made in the West at all. There were instruments known in the Far East, but this is the actual first free reed instrument made in the West. So, as a musical instrument, it's very important. So not only will this appeal to somebody who likes early and unusual musical instruments, to the person who is concerned about technology in the 19th century, again, it's a very, very rare piece. How long have you had it?
Well, my father bought it probably about 40 years ago. He was a watchmaker, and he knew it was rare. It probably would be a house sale in this area. I think we got it at.
What's it worth? Difficult. They turn up so infrequently, it's difficult to put a precise value on it. I would guess maybe around about £4,000.
What?
But I think that's not expensive, because I think it's such a pretty important piece.
Well, I very much hope you've enjoyed this look at some of the hitherto unseen highlights of the series so far, and indeed a few of the treasures of Alnwick. In a few weeks' time, I'll be showing